Hi, I'm Katie Kempner, and we're here at the WebMD stage at Advertising Week. And right now I'm doing an episode of Perspectives. Perspectives is a series of inspiring conversations with remarkable working women who are leading busy and successful lives. And it is my pleasure to speak with Lynda Clarizo, who is the president of U.S. Media for Nielsen.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Welcome.
I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming to talk with me.
Mm-hmm.
So you have had such an impressive career.
Thank you.
And doing so many things, not to mention that you started out at Princeton in one of the first classes, right? That had
the 9th class of women at Princeton, yes.
And then you got your law degree from Harvard, and then went on to have a huge career, which you are still very much having. But I was wondering, could you just give us a little more details from what I said about your career up until now?
Well, I was a lawyer for many years. I went to Harvard Law School, and then first I practiced in the State Department. Then I was a partner in a law firm in Washington, D.C. And then back in the 90s, when I had 2 kids, and I was actually struggling, traveling all the time with my legal profession, I asked the chairman of my firm if I could work with some local clients, and he said to me, "Have you ever heard of the Internet?" Which I hadn't in 1995. And he said there was a company that had just, a relatively young company called AOL, which had just started then. And so I started doing some work for AOL as a lawyer, and then they asked me to join the company in the late 90s, running corporate development. And then my career really, ever since then, has been in digital media. I had a variety of roles at AOL, culminating in being chief revenue officer. Then I was CEO of a company called Envision. Then I ran operations at a company called AppNexus, the big programmatic exchange. And now I've been at Nielsen for the past 2.5 years running the U.S. media business. So I've had a varied career. It's been a really interesting career, and yeah, I hope it's not over yet.
No, definitely not. You said something to me before when we were talking that I think is so important, that women should not be afraid to take risks. And I know that at times that can almost be taken as cliche, but I think it's so important because so many women especially, people in general, but we're talking about women here, and I think especially with them, hold back or don't have the confidence to try to take risks and do things. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, no, I'd love to. I mean, my advice to women is really 3 things. And it's all about not being afraid to be yourself, not being afraid to take risks, and not being afraid to fail, sometimes to even fail in a big way. And I think my career really demonstrates, all 3 of those things. First, I really think you have to be yourself. And women are different than men. Women are more emotional than men. Women are more maternal than men. But I think if you're not yourself, your authenticity won't sort of show through as a leader. So it's really, really important that you're yourself. And I think I told you earlier, I was once criticized for having the leadership style of a mother hen in the New York Times. And, that really made me angry, because I don't think that's a bad leadership trait, and to mock that in a woman when that would never be mocked in a man, I think is something that people should be concerned about and angry about. And risks, I think you have to take risks. To be a leader, your career isn't going to have just a sort of even trajectory. It's going to be a bunch of zigzags, and you have to be able to navigate that and take risks where they come. And I find that's hard for me. I really find that I have to learn that behavior. I was raised to be sort of a follow-the-rules Catholic schoolgirl, and that's not what it means to be a leader and to move ahead. So I forced myself to take risks. I've done a lot of different things in my career, like I've told you. And each time I've thought about it, I've thought about what the next step is, I've talked to my network of friends, and then I've forced myself to make a decision and take a risk. And I'm happy that I've done it. Hasn't always worked out for me. I must say it hasn't always worked out. I've had some fabulous failures. I've been fired. I've had ups and downs in my personal life and my professional life, but I mean, it's all been worth it, and it's all sort of part of this leadership journey.
Well, I mean, when you say you've been fired, that's the thing. So if you take a risk, then there's the possibility of failure, and I think that's what holds people back, or failure, or being embarrassed, or whatever goes into that. So could you talk a little bit about, what your mindset was, making different changes, either because you chose to or not?
Well, failure is tough. I mean, it's hard to deal with. I mean, every time I've failed, first I start crying, which is bad because that's a trait that's attributed to women. You know, second I have felt, and then I felt angry, but at the end of the day, it has been a learning experience. I mean, I was fired quite spectacularly when I was at AOL in 2009. It was, I think, on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, and it was horrible. It was during the economic downturn at the time, and the advertising markets were in turmoil, and I was chief revenue officer, and I mean, it was the worst thing that ever happened to me, and I got over that. A few things. First, my friends, particularly my female friends, really helped pull me through and make sure that I sort of stayed true to myself. And then my network of colleagues and friends in the industry brought opportunities my way, which was great. And then my own children really helped me. I have two fabulous children, a 21-year-old and a 24-year-old. And my son, who was a teenager at the time, he pulled me aside after this firing. He saw it in the press, and he said, Mom, you've always taught me to believe in myself, and now you have to do the same for you. And of course I cried, because that's what I do, but his words were the most important to me, actually. It really helped me.
And they came originally from you. I mean, how amazing is that?
Yeah,
so that's pretty fantastic. Mm-hmm. So you have two kids.
I do, yes.
And you've had this
24.
big career.
Mm-hmm.
Has it been difficult, or I'm sure it has, because it is for everybody. I mean, whether you're a woman or you're a man, but has it been particularly difficult, or what were you able to sort of take away from trying to play the different roles of being a mom and having a big career?
You're asking the balance question.
I am, but you said you don't like balance, so I'm trying to ask it in a different way.
I don't like that word balance, because it seems like such an elusive goal, and I think everybody has their own definition of what balance means for them, and that's really my advice to younger women. There's not one thing called balance. Everybody has to make the compromises that are best for them. So I made compromises in my career. When my kids were young, I didn't travel. I really kept travel down to a minimum, but I worked the whole time. I just took a few months off with each child. That worked for me, but that doesn't work for everyone. And I think one of the things that's really important as women is that we not judge each other. I think we all have to accept the choices that we all make. So, and then if you get imbalanced, I think you can't stress over that. I think women tend to be very hard on themselves. I'm in particular very hard on myself. So I think you need to, if you feel like things are not balanced, if you feel like you're failing your kids, or you feel like things aren't going well at work, not to be so hard on yourself, to set goals that are attainable and to feel good about achieving those goals. I mean, that's one of the things I try to do. One of the little tricks every day is to, at the end of each day, say, okay, here's what I got done and I feel good about that, and here's what I'm going to do tomorrow. It sounds sort of trite and simple, but at least it's important for me.
No, and I think you bring up a good point also, which is looking at it and saying, okay, am I balanced, am I not balanced? But that also change frequently,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
Your circumstances change, whatever happened is different, and so it's always kind of recalibrating.
I would say set goals, get a good night's sleep, be willing to take a step back. You don't have to be perfect all the time. Don't be too hard on yourself. And most of all, be resilient. And resilience is what's going to get you through. And that just comes with time and with learning.
Well, and you mentioned crying a few times.
Oh, yeah, I'm a big crier. I'm a big crier. So, and people, particularly men, totally freak out when you cry in a meeting. It's not a good thing. So.
Well, I'm a crier too. Yeah. But that kind of plays into the difference sometimes between men and women, and men and women's leadership style. And women are typically, this is a generalization, but typically more emotional. I think, in fact, that makes them at times much better leaders.
Absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, one thing that's sort of interesting, most of the books on leadership have not been written by women, they've been written by men. So women are judged against those books, and I've said this to other women, there's no playbook for being a woman leader, and that's scary. but that's okay because we're still sort of all pioneers in this going forward. But you're absolutely right. There was a Harvard Business Review article last year that said emotional, bossy, too nice. These are attributes that are often associated with women leaders. These are characteristics that would be celebrated in men, but they're denigrated in women. And that sucks, frankly. I mean, that's showing there's a deeper societal issue that we have to tackle. And you're right, it's not bad to be emotional. Crying is okay. Just because you cry, it doesn't mean you're a bad leader. I mean, I tell people anyone can come into my office and cry anytime, and that's fine. But it's a behavior which, I'm not trying to stereotype men, but I think people have problems with an emotion. Emotion's a good thing. Just because you're emotional doesn't mean you're a bad leader. But these are stereotypes that we as women need to change. And I've talked to a lot of younger women. I don't want people to feel bummed by this and upset about this. I want younger women to feel sort of a little bit angry and to feel empowered and to sort of take charge of their lives and their career and fight some of these stereotypes that are still out there.
Yeah, I remember earlier in my career, I cried once at work, and my boss, who I was crying to, well, he said to me, "Why don't you leave the office for a little while and go buy a blouse or something and then come back?" I never a blouse.
A blouse, okay. Yeah.
But and I thought to myself, okay, mental note, I can't cry here. But still, in all, I mean, looking back on that now, I just think,
I can feel it coming on. I can literally feel it coming on, and then you have to sort of. What I do now is I just leave the room and try to walk around the block. But what can you do? Again, it doesn't mean we're not bad leaders, and it doesn't mean we should feel bad about ourselves.
Well, you talked about, you mentioned books, and books, on leadership often being written by men. I know you've talked before about Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, and things that you agree and disagree about it. Could you talk a little bit about that?
I mean, I know Sheryl a little bit, and I love the book, and I think all of her advice is right on about leaning in, but I want to add a caveat to that. It's not only about leaning in. I think the book was a little bit too much, it's all on women, that what women have to do is lean in and take charge of their careers. There are things that need to happen sort of underlying in the workplace. First, policies and programs, enabling women and mothers to have more of a work-life balance. And second, I still think there's underlying societal issues, underlying stereotypes that are still out there that we have to fight every day. And that stuff is going to take time. It's going to take more women in leadership positions, more women moving up the ranks. I think it's really interesting what's going on now with the presidential election, with Carly Fiorina and Hillary Clinton, the struggles that both of them are having as women leaders, but I think they're pioneers, and that's a good thing for women.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So I just would love to end by asking you if you have one piece of advice, and you've given us some great advice already, that has helped guide you through your life that you could share with us. What is that?
I would say it's be resilient and don't look back. Always look forward. I think women are too hard on themselves, too hard judging themselves, and I think you need to look forward and keep looking forward, and you will feel good about yourself as a mom, as a leader, and you'll have a happy and successful life.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks I really enjoyed this.